And we are live. We are live. I'm still just gonna wait for people to join us, and then we can begin our session for this evening.
Looking forward to it.
Me too. Me too. We are live. We are live. We are live. No, see, I think you must just tell people perhaps on our social media platforms that we are live and they are free to join in now or tune in into the conversation. Almost feels like we need to have some music playing.
Yes, actually.
Next time,
So,
I can just usher.
yeah,
Uh,
that's a very good idea.
I could just usher people into the
Into
conversation.
the space and yeah.
Just want to check the time. Okay, but we're still good. We can still give people a few minutes to just join us. I see two people have joined in. Hello, who's joined us? Can you just share on the chat who's joined us? Okay, more people are joining in. Welcome everyone who's joining us. Please say hello so that we know we are not all by ourselves. Who are you? Where are you joining us from? And we will give it, let's just check the time. We'll give it another 2 minutes and then we will start the conversation, and our other brothers and sisters will find us on the way. Now we definitely need music.
I enjoy silence, not
Silence is
complaining.
good.
Not
Silence is
complaining.
good. Silence is good.
It's
Silence is good.
golden. It's golden.
Okay, I think we can, commence because I want to make sure we have sufficient time, to have this conversation and also give people an opportunity at the end to ask any questions. So, welcome everyone who's joined us. I know it's a Thursday afternoon, it's a work day. People are still waking up to also go to work or work tomorrow. So, thank you so much for choosing to be in this conversation tonight with myself and Nobuntu Webster, just to get some logistics out of the way. So if you have any questions and comments, please write them in the comment section. But particularly for the questions, Unospiro, who's in the background somewhere, is going to record those questions. And at the end, we are going to go through those questions that you have. I think the last 10 minutes of this conversation, we are going to do that. And also, we are also going to share with you guys details around how to order this book, my book, I hope you can see, Thinking in Full Color, which I guess is the foundation for the conversation that we are having tonight. So yeah, I've gotten those logistics out of the way. So I'm really excited to just introduce or the second installment of the Full Color Leader series. And I think for me, Nobuntu particularly, it's such an incredible full color moment to be in this conversation with you, because literally the Full Color Leader series one was inspired by my book Thinking in Full Color. uh, and you played such for the fact that we even have Thinking in Full Color is because you believed in the vision that I had. For those who don't know, Unobuntu was my editor, so I'm getting carried away and I haven't even introduced myself to those who may not know me. So my name is Ubongeka Mhlongo. I'm the founder of Pen the Vision, which is a content creation organization that focuses on creating content around purpose, because we really believe that purpose is such a key ingredient to make our world a much better place, something I'm deeply passionate about. But I'm also the author of this book, Thinking in Full Color, which really for me is, and Ubuntu, I mean, she obviously is, can share more at the end about like her experience of, us giving birth to Thinking in Full Color. But really for me, Thinking in Full Color was always meant to trigger thinking that informs conversations that change the world. That was the essence of why I even wrote the book. And I think one of the things that, one of my favorite quotes, and I heard this from Unozipo Shabalala, maybe you know her, she heads up the conversation strategist. And I once heard her say, conversations are the birthplace of action. And I love that so much. And for me, what I add to that is, even for us to even begin to have conversations that change the world, we need new thinking first, because you have to think differently first, then have the conversation, then action, comes. So the Full Color Leader series is really this platform that we've created that seeks to have conversations with some of my favorite full color thinkers, people who I think are just game changers in the industries, and just people that I look up to and I love so deeply. And Nobuntu, what an honor, what a privilege, what a pleasure, guys, to be in conversation with Unobuntu. She will introduce herself, because I always like it when people introduce themselves. But for me, like, I think you're just one of those people who are absolutely memorable. Like, when you in Nobuntu's presence, or when you hear her speak, you're never the same again. And that's part of the reason I think I stalked you for a while, in fact. And I prayed about it. This is the woman that I want to be my editor. Thank God, it finally happened. So, Sis Nobuntu, thank you for just agreeing to kickstart the 2022 Full Color Leader series. So, who is Nobuntu? Like, how would you describe yourself to people who don't know you?
For a long time, I struggled with that question, and I always kind of, would think, oh my gosh, that question's gonna come. What am I going to say? But I've come to a place where I actually now know what to say when I get asked that question. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I absolutely appreciate it. You know that I respect you as a thinker, and I respect you as somebody that I think is really going to impact the nation, the continent, the world, not just with your book, not just with Pen the Vision, but actually everywhere you go. And I know that it's something you're already doing in the spaces that you're in and in the work that you do. So I really, really, really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation. I love people who think, and I love people who think, who dare to think differently, from the status quo and from what's known. So I absolutely, absolutely love having conversations with you. So I'm really, really grateful to have this opportunity. Who am I? I'm a Maverick Leader. Somebody was asking me today when they saw your poster, so what's a Maverick Leader? It took
Yes.
a while, to finally be at a place where I could actually really properly define who I am. It took a conversation or two with Unosi, who's a
Mm,
coach. She's a life coach and she's a purpose coach. And for somebody who um, has said that I've been pursuing purpose for the longest time, for most of my adult life,
mm,
for me to like kind of struggle to say who I am it's just
mm,
really a strange thing that for a long time I did struggle to say who I am. And, after a few conversations with her, I got to a place where I really thought deeply about it and could come to a place where I can actually define and actually say, okay, I'm a Maverick Leader. And why is that? It's because of two reasons. I'm a Maverick. So I'm somebody who honestly would rather walk the path that is less trodden.
mm, mm,
So I prefer to think differently about environments, to think differently about the way things are done, to actually
mm,
challenge the way things are done, to do things differently than how they've been done. And the main reason for that is not just that I'm wired like that, and I think I'm wired like that for a purpose and for the time that I live in, but I think it's also because a lot of the stuff in our world hasn't actually worked. Um,
mm,
you look at
mm,
how the world is, you look at how we are,
mm,
you look at the fact that, I mean, a lot of us are depleted. A lot of us are part of a system. Um, in fact, all of us are in some shape or form part of a system that actually takes from us and doesn't pour as much into us unless we're intentional about living
mm,
in kind of a parallel universe and living a different reality. So I think the systems and the world really, for the most part, hasn't worked. So I think that I'm a maverick by design because that's how God designed me, and also by necessity. It has been
mm.
necessitated by the way that the world is, that we really start to come into spaces and think differently. So I'm a
Wow.
maverick. From the age of 24, I left corporate and I started, you know, um, finding different ways of doing things. And
Mm,
I found that as an entrepreneur, I'm 39 by the way now. So for the past 15 years, that's been my life.
wow.
Um, but I found that even as an entrepreneur, I had to think differently, even about entrepreneurship, even
Mm,
about business, because the
mm,
way the world does business or
mm,
entrepreneurship isn't necessarily the way that I believe is what will fulfill us, will be most productive, and will give us a thriving and kind of prosperous kind of world.
mm,
So I'm a maverick because of that. I'm a leader, definitely by design. Um, I can't run away from it.
mm,
Of course, it's been nurtured. It's been nurtured in my upbringing. It's been nurtured by my parents. It's been
mm,
nurtured by the environments that I have been in. A lot of
mm.
them intentionally. So my parents intentionally put me and
Wow.
schooled me in girls' schools my whole life. And in schools that really nurtured leadership, especially in women. So I am a leader. Yes, it's been nurtured, but I do believe that it's also by design. I have tried to run away from it many times, um, and yeah, I failed because I'm a leader. Although having said that, sometimes leadership is sitting back and watching as well. But
Mm,
even then, I'm still a leader, even when I'm sitting back and giving people space to do what needs to be done and to lead even in certain instances. I'm still a leader. So that is how I'm a maverick leader, because I'm a maverick and I'm a leader. And so then, as I'm a maverick, I do it while leading. And when I lead, I do so in a way that brings a maverickness to it.
Wow. Wow. And you're also an author. The
I'm
Fire
also
in
an
My
author.
and
So,
Perfect Grace, Perfect Mess.
and the Fire in My Bones. I have 2 books. So when you ask me who I am,
Mm,
usually I'm not going to tell you the stuff that I've done or the stuff that I do,
mm,
because I learned that those are things that you can take away from me. Those are things
yeah.
that can change tomorrow. I won't even, a lot of the time, tell you that I'm a wife or I'm a mother, which I am, to 2 gorgeous boys,
Yeah.
um, because those are things that I was not born with. Those are
Mm,
titles or accolades that I was not born with, and
mm,
they are titles or accolades that I could lose in life.
mm,
Sad.
mm, yeah.
So they are a big part of me, and they have molded me and they have shaped me, but they don't define who I am.
Mm, yeah.
So those are things that I won't always mention. It's big parts of my life, and I love them, but I won't always mention them. So being
Yeah.
an author, yes, I am an author. I'm the author of 2 books. It's something that I've done in my life, that I never planned to either. But yes, I'm an author.
Yeah.
Um, I am a strategist. I'm a producer as well.
Mm, mm. I'm so privileged that I've gotten to experience your disruptive way of seeing the world, but disruptive in a good way. Because I think for me, one of the things that really attracted me to you to even want to, partner with you from an editing point of view was just how you challenge the status quo. And I think in many ways I wanted somebody who is unafraid to challenge things, to somebody who's unafraid to dismantle particular belief systems that we've held about how we do work, how we live our lives, and so thinking about the topic for tonight's conversation. Um, can Ubuntu be a vital contributor to the modern society ecosystem? I'm not gonna lie. I was thinking about the topic of Ubuntu. I did feel a little bit, because sometimes we can think, we know Ubuntu most, like, we know Ubuntu, and I really. And that's why I'm so happy that I'm ushering into this with you, because of how nuanced and how colorful you are in how you think and how you unpack things and how you articulate. Because I didn't want it to just be, we know what Ubuntu is, come on. And that is why I think for me, one of the first starting points I want us to unpack is, what is Ubuntu? I don't want to take it for granted that everyone just gets it. But what is Ubuntu? Like, it's interesting your name is Nobuntu. But what is Ubuntu? What does it mean to say I am because we are? Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. I think this abasuthu bathi muthu ki muthu kabathu. What does that mean to somebody maybe who's not even necessarily who's thought about it, who just was like, oh, siyabazi Ubuntu, but what does it really mean?
Sure.
Yes.
There are such incredible thinkers and leaders who have defined Ubuntu, one of them being somebody I truly, truly, truly admire. And I'm so bummed I never got to meet
Mm,
Archbishop Tutu.
mm,
Um, he defines Ubuntu so well.
mm,
He has a whole write-up on Ubuntu. But one of the
mm,
core things that it says about Ubuntu in that quote is that what it means is that my humanity is
mm,
inextricably bound in yours.
mm,
So my very existence is bound in the fact that you exist, you know. And for me, that really, really is at the core of what Ubuntu is.
mm,
Ubuntu is relationship.
mhm,
And,
mhm.
we can never, I'm going to say this so many times in this conversation, because the truth is that we can never talk about Ubuntu without talking
Mhm,
about relationship, because that's what
mhm,
it is.
mhm,
Ubuntu
mhm,
is relationship. It's the understanding that I need to relate to the next person. I need to relate to my fellow human, to the point of being able to feel what they feel, to the point
mm,
of being able to understand their pain, to the point
mm,
of being able to understand that I can't thrive when they are in pain. I can't thrive when they are broken. I can't just carry on with my life and thrive when they are in want and in need. So it
mm,
is about relationship that's so deep that it's a mirror. The
mm,
kind of relationship that is a mirror, that when you look at somebody else, you see your own humanity. When you look at somebody else, you see your own existence, your very existence. And for me, that is really the strongest essence of Ubuntu, is that it's about humanity being bound in the other, and it's about a relationship with another human and with other humans, and with humanity that is so deep that you can't be. So when you see, one of the things that moves me to no ends is poverty,
yeah.
you know. So I recently hosted a TV show called Love and Loss, and it was such an intense show. And the stories would break you so much. But I was able to have a thick skin through a lot of it, except when it came to stories that really threw poverty in your face. Those would break me. So one of the things that breaks me is poverty. And so for me, one of the things that as a human, um that is at my core is, I honestly can't be, and I can't sleep when I've been up close and personal with poverty. That's one of the things that moves me. One of the things I worked on last year was producing a documentary on the Phoenix Massacre, which we're still busy with. But going and hearing those stories about what happened during the Phoenix Massacre broke me and tore me. But nothing broke me and tore me more than seeing poverty. Those are the things that made me weep. Coming into spaces of people who'd lost loved ones, but coming into spaces that are really where you can see ukuthi sengathi ukudla la nje ukuthi kube khona estofini, ukuthi switch the stove on, it's been weeks. Those things move. But everything else about humanity should move me just as deeply.
Yes, yes.
That is Ubuntu.
Mm,
Everything else that is about the essence of humanity should move me just as deeply when I interact with it and when I come across it. So many of the things in our country, we've become so used to seeing them that we're
yeah.
almost numb to them, and they don't move us anymore. But it shouldn't be that way. It
Mm,
should move me. Any sort of injustice should move me so much,
mm,
as if it was happening to me or to
mm,
somebody I love and live with.
mm. Sure. Um, I love that, and thank you for unpacking it for us, just around at the essence of it. It's about relationships and relating, and and being moved by things that impact humanity. Some of them we may not necessarily be in them, but by the mere fact that my neighbor is affected by that, it should move me. And uh, as you were talking, I was thinking about a conversation that I was listening to or was watching on YouTube, with one of my favorite full color thinkers. His name is Paul Scanlon. He's an Englishman, and he was having a conversation with a gentleman called Johann Harry, and he's also he an author of a book called Stolen Focus. These are two Englishmen from the United Kingdom, and one of the things that, as Johann, what Paul was asking him, what made you write this book about stolen focus, was because he was moved by a big concern about how our attention is being robbed by social media and this constant digital engagement. But also, one of the things that just fascinated me about the conversation was he had done research, has spoken to various experts, and about how kids, our young kids, are being like if a child in J has an issue with focus, we are so quick to diagnose, oh, this child has ADHD. And I'm
Mm,
not taking away from that, obviously, but they were talking about perhaps the child just needs to play and socialize. And then what fascinated me about that conversation was Paul began to share these are two white men in the UK, and he began to share how when they were growing up, his parents could discipline other people's kids. When they were growing up, he could go to the neighbor and ask for sugar and say, hey. And I think for those of us who grew up in the township would remember Ugnana, how if you guys were short of sugar or oil, you could go to your neighbor's house. When he said and he spoke about like there was this sense of community and this bond. And I was fascinated about that. And I thought, I think which leads me to this thought, and this thought around, because often when people talk about Ubuntu, they will say the African philosophy, Ubuntu, kindness, connectedness, compassion, which leads me to this thought. Is what is African about Ubuntu? Is the word Ubuntu African, or is it the practice of Ubuntu African? Because for me, when I heard that, I was like, hold on, that's how I grew up. Those were
mm,
my experiences of kindness, and here are these two white men advocating for principles that we believe in. Because often when I hear people talk about Ubuntu, it's almost as if Black people, particular Africans, have monopoly over Ubuntu. So what is Ubuntu African? Is the word African? Is the philosophy? Can you dissect that for us?
so Ubuntu, I'm gonna say some really controversial things. Okay. I think you can almost never have a conversation with me without me saying some controversial things. So Ubuntu, the word, is
Mm,
actually consistent throughout the continent of Africa. And one of the things I want to share is that some of the people will know, some will not, may not know that about over 1,000 years ago, there was a Bantu migration
mm,
where we migrated from West and Central Africa as the Bantu tribes to Southern Africa. So, for instance, my brother did a DNA test and found that originally my mom's lineage, and my mom is Zulu, my mom is Zulu, Sibongo, and her
mm,
mom is Zulu, and her grandmother's Zulu. But
mm.
this test found that um, our maternal lineage is Cameroonian, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So, and it traced it to our great grandmother on the maternal side. So great grandmother and grandmother and mother
Mm,
all have traces of Cameroonian heritage, right down to telling us the tribe that we're from on the maternal side. Just before lockdown, my brother was going to do, because it's a test that you get from America and sent back to America. He was going to do the paternal one, so
mm.
that we know. And unfortunately, only he can, as a male, do the paternal one. But he was going to find out then what is our paternal heritage. But this is because it makes sense. It's because of the Bantu migration. So Ubuntu is something that we would have carried throughout the continent, even as we moved around and settled in different areas, which is why you find that the concepts and the philosophy exists throughout Africa. And it is in how we are and in how we live. If you've traveled on the continent, you will experience it in most of the spaces that you will go to. But it is also the word itself. So Ubuntu, the word is Ubuntu in Uganda and Tanzania. Ubuntu in Uganda and Tanzania. It's Unhu in Zimbabwe. So it has all these different expressions which mean the same thing. So it is African in the sense that it is something we embody. It is African in the sense that we have words for it, we have language for it. It's something that we actually in our communities have language for. And thirdly, I believe it is African because I believe that we are people of God. So Ubuntu is a godly principle. It is a godly principle. And as Amanguni, for instance, the very name Amanguni comes from Abanguni. We were called Abangoni because we were so close to God. And it's so interesting how when we think of sin and when we think of Ukona, we think of stuff like, I don't know, we think of things related to maybe just baby drugs, or you think of only stealing, or you think of those things. But godliness is justice. Godliness is love. And Ubuntu is really a concept of love. Godliness is grace, it is mercy, it is all these things that are bound up in the very principle and the very notion and the very concept of Ubuntu. So I think it's African because I think we are a people that have always been very close to God. I think we are a people that have always been very close to God. And I think it is not African because something about us makes us extra special and extra different from anybody else. It is because we are a people who are spiritual and have always been very close to God. And that is how we came to embody and even have language for the concept of Ubuntu. Yeah, I know what you want to say. Say it.
I don't know. I mean, I hear you completely. I guess, the other thought that pops in is, are we saying people, Asian people, white people do not have, because when Paul said that, for me, what it spoke about was like, but these are the same principles that we live by. Are we saying that white people, Asian people do not have the understanding of kindness, of compassion, of interconnectedness? Is that what we're saying? Or like, I think, yeah, that's what I want to get at around this conversation.
I think it's a matter of culture. And I think cultures differ from place to place. You'll find that, for instance, in some of the Asian communities, the very same principle, you can see it lived out. And it perhaps has to do with their spirituality too. And because it's for me, it's a very spiritual concept. But I want to say that a lot of the Western kind of lifestyle and a lot of the Western culture in many of the Western communities, I'm not saying all of them, is actually quite removed from the core principle of Ubuntu. It's quite an individualistic kind of culture. It's quite an individualistic kind of lifestyle, which we have actually come to adopt as Africans. And so I think that with colonization over the years, we really have come to start to really take on and adopt some of the individualistic ways of some Western cultures and some Western communities. Is it impossible for other races, other cultures, for European cultures to then be a people that embody Ubuntu? No, absolutely not. It's in us. We're human. We have the capacity for Ubuntu. And we see it. We see it in kind acts. I'm not saying you will never see kind acts. I'm not saying that you'll never see acts of humanity in Western cultures. I'm just saying that in a lot of Western cultures, the culture is quite individualistic. And that's what has kind of made us, I think, different and more rooted in Ubuntu, because we had quite a connected kind of culture and lifestyle. Even in our families, this family, which is like kind of a nucleus of 4 or 5 people, which we call the nuclear family, that was not who we were. Family extended beyond that. We had what is called in English extended family, and also considered neighbors as family. So I think it's a lifestyle and culture, and I think we've embodied it. I say that I think we understood that aspect of God really, really well.
Another naughty thought.
Yes.
I guess for me, I'm again, my mind is still racing around. Um, when you talk about a lot of Western cultures are very individualistic, right, in how they do things, and I wonder if it's not a factor of progress as opposed to culture. So, for example, a lot of Black people, I think, live in the suburbs would never go and knock on my door and ask for sugar. But when I was growing up in the township or when I visited Gogo in the rural areas, we did that because that was just the nature of how things were done. But as soon as, and again, progress, I'm using this in inverted commas, as soon as we move to the suburbs, we almost adopt this thing of progress. Sorry, we adopt the same culture. So for me, what I've seen is whether you white, Black, or Indian, if you fall within a particular income bracket, there's a way in which you act. Hence, I guess I'm grappling with this thing of, is this a Black thing? Is it really African? Or it's just a because we're not sure how 14th or 13th century or 11th century Europeans lived. Maybe they were very collective. Maybe they live like our ancestors. So I guess it's still something that I'm so deeply grappling on, and maybe it's one of those ongoing conversations that other people can unpack further around that. Is there a thought you want to share?
I want to say to you that
Yeah.
what you're talking about
Mm,
of us moving perhaps to the suburbs, and then because of progress, we no longer have that kind of culture of Ubuntu and interdependence. I want to put it to you that that
mm,
is a progress that is defined by Eurocentric standards and Eurocentric systems.
mm,
And I want to put it to you, and whether that is Eurocentric as of the 18th century, as of the 12th century, we don't know, but we know that as of recent history, as far as colonization, it was what we observed, and what has been observed by philosophers, etc., as a widely Eurocentric kind of culture and way of life and lifestyle, the individualistic lifestyle. I want
mm,
to put it to you that the progress that you're talking about is a progress within that system. And I want to
mm,
say to you, progress in in a different system, progress emakhaya. When my mom tells me of how she grew up, which is not very long ago, my
mm,
mom is 66, 67. When
mm,
she tells me of how she grew, it was a matter of, the better off family. They have all the cows, they have all of that, but that family still is connected and interdependent on the rest of the community. There's
mm,
no there's no sense of they are better than everyone else. In fact, they are the people that people can come to for certain things, but they can also come to the rest of the community for other things. If, for
mm,
instance, in my home, there's not that well off, kunomthandazi who is gifted in prayer, they will come.
mm,
Nothing will stop them from coming. They will still, the children will still play together,
mm,
and we will still depend on one another. In fact, they will give their cow to a neighbor so that they start their own herd,
mm,
and
mm,
so that we are all okay and we are all right. So I want to say that I believe that the progress you're talking about, you're speaking about it in the context of a Eurocentric system and a Eurocentric mindset, and
mm,
that progression in the historical
mm.
African sense did
Yeah.
not remove us from community.
Mm. As you mentioned that, so like there's another thought that comes to me around achievements, or rather maybe where is I guess where is Ubuntu expressed and where is it not? And I'm asking the question around is it only in relation to how we relate with each other, to Mother Earth, to the spirit world? Because, and I asked the question because one of the key components of the modern society ecosystem is, achieving and slaying. And what I've come to notice is that a lot of us, again, Black people, when it comes to our achievements, we are very clear on making it an individual glory as opposed to a collective glory. I'm very clear. Hey, it's Bongeka Mhlongo who wrote the book. Yes, I may say thank you to who and who, but we are very, very clear on I must be known that I built that business. I wrote that book. I did that. So I'm curious as you talk about progress being defined. As you we're double poking at my thoughts around progress. So I'm curious from a historical perspective, how were achievements celebrated, and is Ubuntu does Ubuntu cater for how we celebrated achievements, or is it talking about just being kind, being compassionate? But when it comes to your achievements, it's yours and it's yours alone. Because that's what we do. We are very clear. I came up with that idea, So I'm just as you spoke about that, the idea around achievements and slaying came to me.
Achievements and even milestones was very much a communal thing. I think there was very much a sense of you are part of a whole. And even anything that was happening in your life was seen as a part of a whole. Families would come together. Our whole thing of slaughtering when we celebrate, I think, is such a communal thing and such a pointer and indicator to the fact that we have always perceived ourselves within community. Because if you're going to celebrate and have I don't know, a chicken, well, that's because maybe either that's all you have or because it's only for 3 or 4 of you. But the idea of slaughtering a cow when something great has happened, slaughtering a cow when your child graduates from university, that is not just for you and your family. That is very much a recognition of the community that this child comes from and the community that has raised this child. I think the individualistic influence really is what has led us to this place of here's what I've done, and even sometimes the failure to acknowledge, the people that have been a part of the journey. But I also think that our society is so broken now that sometimes it is all you. Sometimes the truth and the reality of it is that it has been all you. Not everyone has a supportive family structure. Not everybody has an environment or community that has been enabling for them to get to where they need to be. In fact, a lot of people have communities that have been hating on them and that have been telling them they think they're better for wanting to pursue more or wanting to achieve certain goals. So I think, it's a dual thing where it's part of our individualistic culture that we started to adopt, but it's also sometimes just the reality of the fact that because we've lost community, some people don't even have that community around them and really are a product of themselves.
Sure. Sure. I've been hearing a lot of conversations around the phenomena of social media activism, and how it has, there's a big conversation going on right now, how especially Twitter has been such an unkind space. And I was just thinking about this, when even hence I think maybe I'm still in the struggling zone when we say perhaps that as Africans or as Black people, we are very much Ubuntu advocates. And then in my mind, I'm thinking, if indeed that is true, how do we explain the phenomena of Black Twitter, which has become such an unkind space, right? And people blame the medium, but people input into the medium, right? So how do we, I don't know, because there's now a call upon for Twitter to be kinder, right? I think my question becomes, how do we infiltrate social media activism with Ubuntu. And who are these people on Twitter? What homes do they come from? Because I, for example, would never go on Twitter because I've been raised on the principles of kindness. And I know my friends wouldn't do that and just, hurt other people. So where do these people come from that can go on social media and say unkind things and I mean, what has led us to this phenomena? If we say Ubuntu is an African philosophy that perhaps we are taught in our homes, but how do we explain the Black Twitter phenomena that is happening?
I have to say that I just have to put a caveat and say that in me saying that Ubuntu is an African philosophy, I'm not saying
Mm,
that we embody it in 2022. I'm by
mm,
no means that saying that it is a philosophy we still embody. I think we have lost it.
mm,
I think to a large degree, of lost it. We've lost it in our lack of connectedness and
mm,
community. We've lost it in our lack of just humanness,
mm,
and being humane and humanity. I'm by no means saying we still embody it. I absolutely believe it's an African philosophy, which is something we've inherited over time. But I do not think we still embody it for the most part. I mean, there are times when you see it, but I think for the most part, we've lost it.
sure.
The Twitter phenomenon, I mean, it's people coming from the world that we live in the South Africa that we live in,
Mm,
um, and which looks so much different to even than what it looked. I mean, a mere 20 years ago, a mere
mm,
10 years ago, a mere 30 years ago. Something's getting eroded and broken in us, and it seems to be getting progressively more eroded and broken in us. And we need to really restore it, and we need
mm,
to recapture that essence of who we are.
mm,
People are broken and society is broken. And what we see on social media, the hate that we see on social media is a reflection of that.
mm,
Um, it is just a space where people have the courage to say out loud what they're feeling and what they're thinking. I think that, you ask, how do we then change that? Or I think that there is also, though, in social media, especially on Twitter, an
mm,
essence of Ubuntu and community that comes through really often. And I don't
mm,
think we make enough noise about that. On Twitter is where people get somebody will tweet. I saw a tweet a few weeks ago, somebody who was just sharing
mm,
that she's graduating, um, and she was selling vegetables somewhere at the taxi rank or something at her back home. And she was saying that she's selling this, and she wasn't asking for anything. She was sharing a story that she's finally graduating. I can't remember if it was her mom or grandmother, but this is how they've kind of gotten her through varsity. And she's here selling, and she made enough today to buy her dress and, to get her grand, I think it was, to the graduation. She was just sharing. Twitter suddenly went mad. People were offering her dresses. People were
yeah,
offering her, I think it was flights. People were offering her makeup. People were getting her hair done. People were offering her money. People were offering her airtime. People gave all of that in January. In January, people on Twitter. I think it was January. I might be mistaken, but I think it was right at the beginning of January. People did that on Twitter. We see that all the time on Twitter. There is a lady, I forget her name, on Twitter, who is struggling with this illness that has got her flying all over the world, to India, to the US, to Switzerland, busy trying to get treatment, and sometimes, and Twitter for the past, I think, 2 or 3 years has been Black Twitter, has been paying for her treatments.
wow.
South African people have been paying for her treatments, finding her doctors, flying her across the world to go get these treatments, supporting her
Mm,
emotionally, praying for her. This is her
mm,
community. She'll do a video when she's feeling down. She'll do a video when she's letting it go. The most recent video I saw, she was letting it go. She was like, guys, thank you so much for traveling with me on this journey. But now I feel like I'm gonna let this go, and I'm gonna let God do what He's gonna do. If it's His will, He's gonna take me. And actually, I've seen so many times Black Twitter, pushing against her and saying, no, please fight, please fight. But this time they were like, we get it. A lot of
Wow.
them were like, you know what?
I get it. Yeah.
We get it, and she stays accountable to them because they've been with her financially, emotionally, spiritually on this journey. So she stays accountable and she says how she's feeling. If she's not pursuing treatment, she says so. And that's
Mm.
Twitter, guys. That's still
Wow.
happening on Black Twitter.
Wow.
So we've lost a lot of it and we're broken, but there are still pockets of
Yeah.
Ubuntu
Yeah.
that we see in us, and I think we don't talk about it enough. We need to be amplifying that, and we need to be doing that in our own spaces. There's a young man who just graduated, who in the middle of the first lockdown started DMing me,
Wow.
asking me for stuff, and he just graduated, and he wrote a long thing to say, "I've now graduated.
Wow.
Um, thank you," or whatever. Now I'm looking for a job. Help me if you will. And we're on this journey together with this guy I don't know, with this
Wow.
young man I don't know. And he just randomly DM'd me on Twitter. So,
Wow.
and I know that there's a lot of stories like that on Twitter, because sometimes people tweet and
Yeah.
say, this lady, she doesn't want anyone to say who I am or whatever, whatever. But this is what they've been doing for me. So it's not all bad.
But yeah, thanks for bringing that color, to the Twitter conversation. And I think people who are dialing in will be so intrigued because you're right. As you were saying that, I was like, she's right. I don't know how many stories that I've seen on Twitter, I've heard about where literally people mobilize when there's an issue, even on television. If maybe they've watched something and it really traumatized them, I think there's been a couple of examples. They mobilize, and for me, I guess it gives the sense of hope, and also I guess also challenges us not to have this tendency where we hear like one, because there's a tendency when we hear something, oh, this is bad, and then everyone reshares, but we don't, we like to be activists on second hand or third hand information, and it's so important to be activists because on full color information where you've weighed all of the different you've seen all of the different situations, and then you have a conviction. So thanks for bringing that. So I know we have a few minutes left. I can see Unos, and I really want to go through the questions. Sis, I guess for me, I'm also quite as much as I'm this full color person, but I'm also pragmatic. I'm always thinking about, okay, we talk about this thing about kindness and being more interconnected and being humane. How do we gauge our own Ubuntu at an individual level? Because a lot of the times when we talk about the conversation of Ubuntu, I always feel like we other a lot. We are always calling upon people who support Ubuntu, society must have Ubuntu. But I've never heard anyone say Minang Nabuntu. I've never heard somebody say pardon?
I'm saying
You know,
true story.
I've never heard anyone say, I don't have, we are always, no, I have Ubuntu, but how do I really objectively gauge my own Ubuntu? Do I use an app? Should we develop some sort of app to say, okay, today, try and do these 5 things to live? Like, how does it come into our consciousness? Because I feel to influence changed behavior, it must be in your consciousness, consistently. How do we do that in the most practical way? Like, just 2 or 3 examples to help us, because you said we have lost this, but I'm like wanting us to return, somehow
Yeah.
to the sense of kindness and compassion and interconnectedness.
I think I said I'm going to say the relationship thing a lot,
Mm,
and it's because Ubuntu is relational.
mm,
I think the way to gauge yourself when it comes to Ubuntu is to ask yourself, what are my relationships looking like?
sure. Wow.
What are my relationships looking like?
Mm,
What is my relationship with
mm,
my looking like?
I love
What is
that.
my relationship? Am I treating my health the way I would like to be treated? What is my
Mm,
relationship with my boss looking like?
wow.
Am I treating my boss, regardless of how they're treating me? Am I treating my boss how I would
Mm,
like to? how I would like to be treated?
Mm,
What is my relationship
mm,
with the cashier looking like
yeah.
at the store?
Wow.
What does it look like? What is my, what is my relationship, especially, what is my relationship looking like with people who can do nothing for me, with people
Wow.
who I think can do
Yeah.
nothing for me?
I love that.
What is it
Love.
looking like? And
Yeah.
that's the metric. That's the metric. What are my relationships looking like? The most important, with people that I don't need anything from right now.
Mm, mm, mm. Wow, that's, and I think that's such a practical matrix, and I love that. I really, really love that. And I think for me, it also just gives me a sense of calmness, because sometimes I think when we have these conversations, it almost seems out of reach in terms of how do I then live this, because I want to live this, I want to be better at it. But I like the question: how are my relationships looking like? I want us to go to the questions that, for you, so that the people who are still tuned in, we can address the questions. So I see. I don't know. I think this is a comment. Let me just read it. Uh, Ish, the problem in our community is we back people. We don't motivate each other, and we badmouth each other. Jealousy is the problem. We don't know who we are, where we come from, where we are going. Self-discipline and introspection is very important in this matter. I think that was a comment from Sean. I think, yeah, no, Nobuntu definitely covered elements of that. And then there's a question here: how do we move from where we are now to getting back to the true essence of Ubuntu? How should we be thinking? I think you've addressed that, but I mean, you can add more when you spoke about relationships. That's the essence. But is do you want to add to that?
I do. I think how we get back is starting with you. I mean, we always want to have these big grand plans about let's start a movement, let's do this. But honestly, it just starts with you. The
Yeah,
means and the end are the same, really. Um,
yeah,
what you want to see is what you need to become.
yeah. Ooh.
So yeah, what you want to see in the world is what you need to become.
Woo! That's a
It's
tweetable. I
it's
love it.
that's what you
Yeah,
gotta do. You just have to
yeah,
become what you want to see. Become what you
wow,
want to see. You don't be
yeah,
looking around for it. Don't
yeah,
be even trying to pull people along
wow,
with you, because actually it's so it's so contagious.
yeah,
Um, that kind of thing is so contagious. Just you. The
mhm,
means and the end are the same. What you want to
wow,
see is what you need to become.
yeah. I love that. Cool. And then there's another question here in the that shared with us is, how are we living Ubuntu as Africans in today's world?
I think the Twitter example is it, man. I think that is absolutely it. There's lots of movements that we have. We do these back to school things. We have all these anything that's community. Anything that's being able to live in community. That's how we're living it in today's world. If I could just add, I have a really, really, I'm really, really blessed to have a really strong sisterhood. I don't have biological sisters, but I have a
Yes.
strong
Yeah.
sisterhood. And within the sisterhood, we also are families and family
Yeah.
that really just does life together. We are community. One of the things that one of my sisters said was, the way God set things up, and the way God set up community is that we're never all in the same place.
Mm.
So if I'm struggling with something, there's always somebody who's in a better place than me. And we always like to think of giving as being only financial, but it's not only financial.
Yes. Yes.
If
Yes.
somebody's struggling, I mean, one of the things we did was fetch each other's kids for a year. So I fetched my sister's kids for a year because she had just gotten this exec position. It was a lot. I own my own time. I'd actually taken on less because I needed to be there for my kids at the time. They're a bit younger. And I picked up her daughter from school every day. I offered it to her and I was like, let me do this. Because I
Wow.
know, because she does things like that. She does things like that. She does things just like that. In our community, I've had sisters who said, "Oh, you. Oh my gosh, can I please pay for your book launch?" I've had sisters who said, "Oh, I can
Wow.
see you doing this project. Um, I'm gonna send you money," and they'll send
Wow.
like 10K towards
Wow.
a project that they really believe in that I'm doing. Um, we have instances where that certain friends are going through ish, and you just send money. You just send money,
Yeah.
or you just send food, or you just So we will never all be. Or we go on holiday, or go away for go for lunch or for dinner or for a weekend, and whoever's okay at that point will be the one to pay. So that's community.
Mm.
That's Ubuntu. We're never all in exactly the same place. And whatever's missing, whatever the gap is, you can always fill it for the other person.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. And then there's another question here as well that says, how do we relook progress as Africans? We are swept up in Eurocentric progress. Are we able to redefine it? Like, have we gone so far that we can't come back?
Oh man. I love that question so much because it's such a challenge for me. It's something I think about all the time. And one of the answers I came to was that we can't go back. We have gone
Mm,
too far. We can't go back. And going back is perhaps not the answer. I
mhm,
think what we can do is we can carve a new mindset and a new reality into the future.
mm,
So we can take, the philosophies and the fundamentals of, who we were. We can take that inheritance and we can combine that with who we want to be. And we can start to, create new narratives. And one of the ways, so that's why I'm so passionate about storytelling. One of the ways we can do that is storytelling.
yes.
Tell stories that look like what we want to become. Incorporate those philosophies of old and combine that with the society we want to see in future and start telling stories that look like that. The more we tell stories that are like, I think we have to tell less of, and I say this being a storyteller who's told a lot of story about what we look like now. Even my latest production did that. But I think it's so important that now we know where we are. I think this is an era where we need to start telling stories and giving visuals and pictures and words to what we want to look like in future.
Mm, wow, cool. And then there are two comments I see that Muspio wrote here. Comment one says, as someone from Durban moving up to Johannesburg was a shock. One thing you do in Durban is greet people when you walk past them. Doing this in Joburg had people looking at me sideways. Lol. And I must confess, I stopped greeting people, but I'm challenged to go back to what I used to. Beautiful. Beautiful.
I love
And
that.
and then a comment from Oluchi, I enjoyed this conversation. Beautiful, beautiful.
I love that, Nosi. I love that,
Yeah,
Nosi, because I think one of the big things is about having the courage to be who and what we are. So
yeah.
I think even coming into, I mean, I was probably like 4 or 5 when I came into multiracial schools. And
Mm,
I think in that instance, you start trying to adapt,
mm,
and you want to become like the environment that you're in. You want to assimilate the
yeah.
environment that you're in, and you start losing so much of who you are. And I think we just need the courage to be who we are
Mhm,
completely,
mm,
without holding back and without being scared of what it looks like. We need to just be who we are and to teach our children to be who they are, no matter what environment they come into.
wow, wow. So I wanna ask this as a concluding question for you. Who have been your best examples of this spirit or this principle, this philosophy, whatever people want to call it, of Ubuntu? Who have you been like so looked up to and so amazed by how they live out Ubuntu?
So, I mean, I just shared with you guys about my friend circle. I mean,
Mm,
I'm really inspired by that community, and by my sisters mostly, and how we live this kind of life where, like I said, we're never all in the same season at the same time. So we're able to benefit from each other's seasons all the time. So none of us can ever say, we don't have someone to be there for our children. None of us can ever say, I want or I lack anything. None of us can ever say, I don't have anybody who's got the time to listen to me and hear my cry right now. Because, while there might be a season when I can't listen, somebody else can listen. So that is really, I really appreciate and am inspired by that community. But fundamentally, being a Christ follower, I'm inspired by Christ's Ubuntu. Ubuntu is the ultimate. Christ is the ultimate, for me, picture of Ubuntu, laying a life down for a friend. Really is the ultimate picture of Ubuntu. Um, I find that, I am inspired by my parents, by how much they sacrificed and gave up for us.
Yeah.
And I think they take that from the model of Christ, and how
Wow.
much they gave up. I have parents who really gave up a lot, who'd go without, just to try to give us something better than them. How much more selfless can you get to want to give somebody something better than you? But I think the model comes from Christ, and that for
Wow.
me is the ultimate picture of selflessness, is the ultimate
Wow.
picture of love and of humanity,
Mm,
being so dependent on the
mm,
other.
wow. That's so beautiful, sis. And for me, I've really thoroughly enjoyed our conversation tonight, and I'm deeply challenged. I think it's not an easy conversation to have. Hence, for me, it was so important to ask the question around how do I gauge it at an individual level, because in my convictions, I want to be a worthy servant before God, and I never want to do it by othering others. I'm always also calling upon myself, and you really made us think and challenge us, and I even when we embarked on the journey with the book, guys, for those who joined late, this whole full color leader series is inspired by my book Unobuntu, was so integral. Even there, you showed me Ubuntu, you lived your name. You showed me Ubuntu because I was very nervous, because I had this silly concept of having emojis in a book and just doing it. And then she's like, "Yeah, let's do it." Who says that? And I'm just so grateful, sis, to have met you, to have experienced you, your spirit, your mind, for just not just for your family or your sisterhood, but for our continent. And you continue to impact so many people, and I'm so grateful that we could. This is a much bigger conversation that we are plugging into. There is a revolution that's happening around being more human, being more kind, being returning to a community sense of values. And I think conversations like tonight seek to make the world a much better place, which is something that I know both of us are deeply passionate about. And um, thank you so much. And I think before I share just a concluding thought, guys, to those who have not gotten a copy of the book, um, so you can order the book on our website, which is www.penthevision.co.za. I think Unosi will write it in the comments section. You can just go to shop. It's very easy, and yeah, just order this incredible body of work that Nobuntu plays such a critical role to make sure that it comes to life. Sis Nobuntu, are there any concluding thoughts for you around just our conversation tonight around the thinking in full color book or anything else that you just want to leave as a word of encouragement, or as a word for us to think about as we exit or prepare to exit the conversation?
Guys, please don't give up on Ubuntu.
Mm,
Don't give up on it. The world so desperately needs it. And I think that it is at the core of one of the things that is going to make us as a continent um, the lighthouse
mm,
for the rest of the world. I think that it is our It is our light, and it is one of the ways that we're going to pave the way for the world. If we can incorporate it into our workspaces, if we can incorporate it into our economy, if we can incorporate it into social issues, into how we live, if we can incorporate Ubuntu into every single aspect of our lives, then we will have done what I believe is at the core of everything else that we are. The rest of our brilliance as a people, I think, is so. I think Ubuntu is so pivotal to the rest of our brilliance as a people, and I think that we really, really are the lights on the hill when it comes to that. So don't give up on it. Don't give up on it. People are weird. People are weird, and we're weird because we're broken. Sometimes we won't want to be in community. Sometimes we'll abuse your humanity and your humanness and your humaneness, but don't give up.
Yeah.
Don't give up. Don't give up on Ubuntu, because the world needs it, and because God will reward you. God will reward you, because Ubuntu is the essence of who God is, and so you're being like God when you embody Ubuntu. So please don't give up on it.
Wow. One of my favorite quotes around Ubuntu, and I love what you just said. Don't give up on it, and we are a lighthouse, and this is and going to be, if we take Ubuntu, this is, I guess, what is going to make us so unique and our unique value proposition. And I'm so excited because I know there's a friend of mine, who Dr. Spoga is in data. I think she's here. She is, I've been deeply passionate about that and how we humanize business and bring in this concept of Ubuntu. And I know many others who are in that journey and that move, and it gives me great encouragement. But to exit the conversation, for me, one of my favorite quotes that for me speak to Ubuntu is a quote by Mother Teresa, when she said, "If you want to change the world, go home and love your family." And that, the simplicity but yet the profound in that, for me, is it gives great encouragement that, and it's conversations that change the world aren't always conversations that I had by the United Nations or the IMF or the South African government or the African Union. Conversations that change the world are conversations that we have in obscurity, that we have with each other in the privacy of our homes, that we entrench the principles of being kind, those are the conversations that move the world forward. And we are hoping that even tonight's conversation that reminds us not to give up on Ubuntu will continue to, I guess, contribute to a much better world, a much better society. And what an honor, sis, what an honor to just sit in conversation with you. I love you so much. You're absolutely one of my favorite humans. And I'm just, so marveled by the caliber of the woman that you are. And yeah, I am just excited about, the imprint that we are going to leave in this generation. Many years from now, we will literally have made such a difference, because we have a much higher mandate. You have a kingdom mandate. And so, yeah, thank you. Thank you for
Oh,
joining in, and thank you to
thank you for the conversation. Mwah.
Mwah. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in. Right, I know it's a Thursday evening. We appreciate you. Thank you for just, yeah, I guess, believing enough, in this movement, in this full color movement that I want to impact the world with. And God bless each and every one of you. Until we meet again, have a fantastic evening. Ngiyabonga from Bongeka Mhlongo. Bye, everybody.